Okay, so now it's 6:40. Let us begin. So we left off yesterday on Samach Zayin Amud Beis. We've been talking about carrying within a reshut yachid into a carmelist, or from a carmelist into another carmelist. Yesterday's discussion. Today it's going to be focusing on what happens when issues that come up in terms of getting hot water from one place to another on Shabbos when something went wrong with the Eruv. We're going to figure out why the Eruv wasn't there, or why the Eruv wasn't good, or how we get around that issue when we have a need to borrow some hot water from somebody else when for some reason, the one that you prepared is not sufficient. So, so there was a certain baby whose hot water spilled. So you wanted the hot water ready, so that way you could properly clean off the baby after the baby had its Brit Milah, like a baby boy. So you want to make sure that the baby you can clean it again, because Brit Milah is also major surgery, so you want to make sure that it's all cleaned up properly so that it'll be able to heal properly as well. So therefore you need hot water. So what happened is that so somebody has some and it's spilled. So So the Rabbah said, "Oh, that's okay. I have some hot water in my house, so bring it from my house."
Can't hear.
You can't hear me? Better now? Is it better?
You're
Yeah,
you're
now
you're breaking up.
You were froze up a little.
Okay.
Now you're back.
Okay, so the case is that maybe you needs hot water, so he probably runs it after the Brit Milah, and then the water spilled. So Rabbah said, "That's okay. I have some spare hot water in my house, so we'll get it, and that will be good." And then Amar Abaye v'halor v'yan. But then Abaye is like, "Wait." Still not good?
It says your bandwidth is low. Like sometimes you're okay for a couple of seconds and then it freezes up.
Okay, so I'll connect via my phone then as well, so that way we'll have audio, and then I'll share this. Then if there are any pictures to share, I'll share it that way. Okay, fine. So let's do that. Sorry, one moment, please, while I connect via my phone. Where's the link? Okay, is it better yet? No, 1 second. Is it working now? Just 1 second.
You're okay now, yeah.
Okay, fine. So we'll try again, and then if it stops, then I'll go for my phone. Okay. So again, so we have the case of the babies whose water spilled. So we got a Beit and Rabbah apparently, and Rabbah lives in the same hutz there. So then Beit says, but we didn't make an Eruv, so therefore you can't get the hot water from your house to bring it over here. So then he says, Amar Lei nismach hashituf. So then Rabbah says, that's okay, because we for sure did shituf, right? We did shituf of oat, so therefore we can still carry. Amar Lei halo shatfinan. But Abai is like, no, we didn't do that either. So Nemru lei legoy leitile. So then Rabbah says, fine. So let's get a non-Jew to bring it, because you're allowed to use this is for a start of a chola. So therefore, we should have the non-Jew bring the hot water, right? So therefore, that should be fine. So Amar Abaye v'lo tevei lamar v'lo shalke or Yosef. So Abaye said, I wanted to protest about, say it is usher to do, but Rav Yosef stopped me. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Kahana, Ki Haviran Be Rav Yehuda, Hav Amar Lan, B'Doraita, Motfinam Tiyufta, V'Hadar Avdinan Maseh, V'Yirbanon Avdinan Maseh, V'Hadar Motfinam Tiyufta. whenever there's a problem comes up on Shabbos and you think somebody's in violation of something, if they're violating an Isser D'Oraita, then you'll ask and say what's going on right away. But if it's only for something about D'Rabbanan, you let it go and then you'll ask afterwards. There's degree of severity there. So, okay. So then afterwards, so now, Vakter Hachi, now that the water has been brought, but that means the non-Jew. Now Baya wants to know, wait, how like, he doesn't know what's going on. So now Joseph answers him back. Okay, I'm relay. My Baya lo Lamar. He's like, wait, so Abaya, what was your question after Rabba? I know I stopped you there because now's the time or to ask. So what do you want to say? So Amarle Tanya Hazah Shavut Vamir Lagoy Shavut. We normally say that Asur Midrabanan to sprinkle paraduma waters on a person on Shabbos, and it's also Asur to do Mir Lagoy on Shabbos. Right? But they're both only Asur Midrabanan. So Mahazah Shvut Ve'ena Docha Shabbos, after Mir Lagoy Shvut Ve'ena Docha Shabbos. So just like you can't be machi or para and duma waters on, you sprinkle somebody with para duma on Shabbos. Similarly, you shouldn't be able to do a Milan Ukri on Shabbos. They're both Shmir bottom. So what I was saying is, are we saying this extenuating circumstances where you're allowed to do it? What's going on here? So Marley said, Rav Yosef says back to him, Lo shani lost bain shvut ipe ma'aseh lo shvut lepe ma'aseh. Don't you know there's a difference between whether or not you have an actual act or not when you're violating, when you're doing a violating Nidra Banan. Passively versus actively. Because here you didn't really violate Amir Lanachar, you could simply told him to go get the hot water. That's not really a malacha. So therefore, you didn't tell him to go heat up water, therefore it should be fine. Right? So so then now in the middle of this discussion, now Rabba Chanan hears this and chimes in. So now Rabba Chanan is like, wait, what? The courtyard that houses both, the mavoy that houses the alleyway and the courtyard that house both Rabba and Abaye doesn't have, and as well as Rav Yosef, how could such a with such gedolim not have an Eruv or a Shituf to allow you to carry in extenuating circumstances? How could you not have an Eruv or a Shituf set up just in case something has happened? So this is one of the best reports for why you always have an Eruv, even if you don't think anybody's actually going to need it, because things may come up and then you might end up needing the Eruv. So Amalei, mine of it. So then I said, well, what could you do? Mar lav orche. So he says that for Rava, he can't do it because basically with Eruvin, the way you used to do it is not nowadays where the main issue is setting up the walls. The issue back then was arranging for everybody's participation in the Eruv itself. Which means if you go around on every Eruv Shabbos and ask everybody to contribute something towards the Eruv, and since everybody was really poor, that would be like, so it took a lot of like arm twisting to have anybody to be willing to give up anything. So we said Mar Lav Orche. Right, so we said so Rabba, he can't really he can't go around collecting, like he's that's not the job that he can handle. And I'm not treating a bigger side. And Rabbi says I'm too busy learning. And we also remember a couple of them ago we mentioned about how his learning his focus was so fragile that if he had to spend all day trying to run around chasing after the Eruv, he would not be able to learn at all. It takes too much out of him. Because we mentioned that if he smells, kuta habav, if he smells this nice, great dip, then he can't learn. So if that's all it takes to get you distracted, then trying to arrange an Eruv is going to make sure you have no chance of learning whatsoever at all on any Friday ever. So, and then inhu lo mashke, and everybody else, they're just not interested in getting in dealing with it. So therefore, it doesn't end up happening, right? So basically, all of the people who should be, either they have the reasons why they don't do it. So then Then we're going to ask, so if we eat Ignilahu pizza masala, and similarly, if I were to try and contribute my own bread to everybody else, I can't really make the Eruv out of my own bread, because if I were to do that, we have an issue, because I'm not going to actually let them eat my bread. Like, I'm poor, like I'm super poor. Then I have enough bread, barely, for my family to subsist on. If I start using my own bread for the Eruv, and somebody comes and asks me to have some bread, I'm going to have to say no. And if that's the case, then that means that the Eruv, that means that the Shituf or the Eruv is no good anymore. Part of the Eruv is that we're all together, we all have equal rights to something. So if you are not fully giving it over to, just in case anybody from enclosed in the Eruv wants to have the bread, they can't. If they can't do that, that means that the Eruv is no good. That'd be a problem. And what's our source that we know if somebody refuses this problem? The Tanya Asabim name Mavoy should be Keish Yain Vishpashemen Lona Nulo Batal Shituf. Right. It says that if somebody asks for wine or oil, then the Shituf is no good. Right. This is for Shituf Mavoot, because for Eruv we only use bread, but for Shituf Mavoot, which is used using a storehouse of either bread, wine, or oil, where everybody collectively owns a share of. So, but if anybody's ever denied access to it, then that means it's no good. So then he says, so then Rabbi Baruch Hanan says, well, couldn't you just give, from the storehouse just one revius of vinegar to everybody? So,
Question.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, the Eruv is like the Eruv Tchum. You can partake in it. So he would just be putting his bread aside and then able to eat it on Shabbos.
Correct, but there's a certain minimum amount that you need per person in order for the Eruv to go into effect, or for the sheets to go into effect.
Okay, so you're talking about when he didn't get participation. He'd have to create
You
more than he had.
Right.
Okay.
You need to have Mazur Shtei Sudo, enough food for two meals per person until you hit 18 people.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay. So in which case, then it's a set amount. But until then, you need to have per person, and he can't afford that amount of food because he's that poor. That's why he's stuck. So they're like, okay, so why don't we try doing with other items? Then so that's stuff that's in the common storehouse.
Yeah. Okay.
So right, so we've got a barrel of vinegar here. Why can't we just use that? So Tanya Amish Tatma Otzar. But right, it says you're not supposed to make shituf out of the storeroom, right? Because and why is that no good? Rashi says because the issue here is brera, right? Because you don't know whose that is going to be at the end of the day, because it's all jointly owned by everyone. So therefore, that wouldn't really work if it's still in the storehouse. So it's not shituf, it's not Eruv Chatzero, it's not usable for either at this point. So hot time is stopping, but didn't we say that you can use the stuff used in alleyways? So which one is it? Sorry, in storehouses. So Amar Boshai Elokashja Habet Shammai Habet Hillel. So the one who says that you can't is Beit Shammai. The one who says that you can is Beit Hillel. None. So, and how do we know that these are Hillel and Shammai's opinions? Made by BAYT, below Ptachim Harbe, Kulan Tmeid. So I learned in Mishnah that if somebody passes away in a house, then we say that the Tumat Hamed, which is transferred through Tumat Oel, goes out through every single open exit to the house. Which would mean that every single room that's connected to the room where the person passed away died would end up being Tameh. So if the person could have taken the body out through it, then Tumat Oel will go through that area as well. But if only one is open and the rest are closed, then we'll say that the chuma, then the chuma mate goes out the door where the mate is going to be being taken afterwards. And if you had in mind to go out of a particular window or doorway, that was a sufficient size, and that would mean that the other entrances will not become tamei, only the ones that you decided on will be. So, Shamra Omrim, who Yishev ad shelo yamut tamei, v'hil omrim af b'shem mutamei. The question is, at what point do you have to have in mind where you're gonna take the dead body, like after the person passed away? Are you gonna? So if the Beit Shammai says you have to have thought about it before because ein breira, right? You can't decide post facto what you wanted to do. The Tuma starts as soon as the person's dead, so you better have decided how you're gonna take care of the person who passed away properly prior to his death, or we're gonna say the Tuma goes everywhere. But Beit Hillel says, no, even after he died, because we say that you're allowed to do prayer, you can make a decision post facto that'll work retroactively. So, and that's how this would work out then. Okay. Again, so the point of this whole, again, that story with the Yanuka was we were again talking about, again, the resolution at the end of the day was we were really not going to bring it over. We also, as an aside, we learned about the fact that you should have an error set up, but seemingly the issue that came up in Talmudic times was mainly an issue of it being difficult financially, and that was the only thing that was considered to be a valid excuse. Right, being way too much effort or too much money, but seemingly you having halachic issues is not considered to be a valid excuse because that's not the answer that they gave in that circumstance. Because they're assuming that pretty much every single area is able to be fixed. Just you have to figure out what, or you can make a smaller error just to figure out how you would do so. Okay, so now we have another case with a water spill, another in a different way. So Hoyanuka, again, this happens pretty frequently. That somebody that they run out of hot water or it spills. So and then a baby, and then somebody's getting for a bris or some other need on Shabbos that's related to Pikuach Nefesh, not quite Pikuach Nefesh, but like ordering on it. So Amar L'Rava. So the solution is, again, this is not a matter that is actually Pikuach Nefesh. It's simply a matter that's helpful. So like for a purpose of a chola, and bosakana, which you normally would not be able to do on Shabbos. So what's the solution? So we say that we should so we can't do it for the baby, heat the water straight. So what are we going to do? So his mother is considered to be chola shlish bosakana. She just gave birth. So and then ask a non-Jew to heat the water for the mother. See if the mother needs hot water for whatever reason, because a woman who just gave birth is considered to be the status of being a chola sheyesh bosakana because, well, childbirth is very dangerous, as well as the recovery. So therefore, if the mother needs it, then therefore we use the leftover we can use for the baby, and we'll have a non-Jew heat it up and then they'll solve all of our issues. So Amar Le Rav Misharsha Rava. So Rav Misharsha said to Rava, "Yimei ka'achla tamre." What do you mean? Like the mother is perfectly fine and well. She's eating dates, which are considered to be very hard food for them to eat unless they're very healthy. Amar Le Amor Tunva Ba'alma Hu Danakible. So no, Dora said no. She simply had a hunger craving. That's why she's eating dates. Like she really shouldn't be. It's gonna be bad for her health. She's just, she had a craving after she gave birth, and that's why we gave it to her. But really, like she should be still eating, like soft mushy foods because we think she's gonna put it all back up. So that's why. So again, so for the baby you can't, but for the mother you could. So now another case where the water spills. So Haynu Kodesh Kamime. Amar Rava Panu Li Mane Mibe Gavra Levenashi Va'alzil Ve'etiv Hatam Ve'evta Lahu HaChatzer. So, right. So apparently this happened, and we wanted to find a way to get the water from somebody else's house. So, so what he said is, so he realizes this is happening. So he just says, "I know how to solve this." So he says, "You know what? Take all my things and put it into the from the men's chambers to the women's chambers." Meaning, apparently his house had two sort of rooms, one for the men, one for the women, which means that he was rich. Because back in the day, people had only one room houses, so he even had two, one for men, one for women sleep in. So he had to move to the women's one because the women's one didn't open directly into the courtyard, whereas the men's one did. That way, he said, "Just bring my stuff in here. That way, I'll give up my rights to the chatzer, as should everybody else, and that way, except for the person who needs it to bring the water. And that way we'll be able to bring the hot water from, or he'll give his rights also to that part of the house as well, that hot water is stored. Then when they can bring the hot water to the baby who needs it. And that's how they would be able, that's how they'd be able to transfer it. So Amrle Eruvina l'Rava. But did Eruvina say tell to Rava, Amar Shmuel ein bitul reshut mechatel lechatzer. Wait, but didn't Shmuel state that you can't negate your rights to the courtyard to courtyard? Amrle Alma Kirby Okaman Sirli Damar Yesh bitul mechatel lechatzer. Right? So Eruvina says, Rava, wait, but that's against Shmuel, who says you can't do it from like one courtyard to another courtyard. But Rabbi Yochanan said, but he says back, nah, it's fine, because I hold like Rabbi Yochanan, so we're allowed to do bitolistic case, therefore we're okay. Isavarla, Mar Shmuel, but if master doesn't hold according to Shmuel, native Mar B'diltei. So Venifto Lahu Ladidu, Venihu Drew Inu Venifto Lamar, Hamara Mavatlin, Chaz Mavatlin. Wait, but if you don't hold like Shmuel, then you could have made things much easier. Why did you have to move all of your stuff from room to room? Rather, you could have simply had done a chain of negation. You could have negated to everybody else, and then they renounced it in favor of the person who needs the water, and therefore we'd all be good. Right? You see, because he says that we're allowed to do multiple stages of negations. You don't need to like so you don't need to do this whole moving your stuff into your room and all that. Like you could have done it much simpler. So Amar Bahak Shmuel severely, Amar Emivatlin, Chad Mevatlin. So it says, right, in general, right, I don't hold in terms of these that you can't be mevatel from one courtyard to another courtyard, but I do believe that there is a problem of doing bittul repeatedly to different people. Right? So you're allowed to only negate once, and that's it. None of this negating to personal negate, that's too much. That doesn't make sense. So then Ravina's still confused. He says, wait, but isn't the same reason why you can't? We mentioned the fact that the reason why you can't do multiple bittles, and the reason why you can't go from one courtyard to another courtyard is because it has to all be done at once in a way that would work, right? So therefore, so what do you mean by that? So my time I aim mevatlin because of mevatlin. So what's the reason why you can't do repeated negations? La nishum nekim the battle there shute it's dalak lay mehachal agam, right? Havalay kabel chatzer acheret. Aim bitol der shut mechatzer lechatzer. Marnami lo niftal. Right. So didn't we say the way it works is as follows? That why can't you keep negating? Negate? I'm going to negate. Your Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda in the same chatzer. Why can't Reuven negate to Shimon and then negate to Levi and then negate to Yehuda? The issue is because once you negated once, it's as if you now live in a different courtyard. And once you live and you're right, as if you're no longer living in this courtyard, you're living in a separate area. So that would mean that you're from a different chatzer now, and then therefore you can't be mevatel rishus once you're now in a separate courtyard. That's why you have to make sure that you fully remove yourself the first time you do bittul, because once you started doing bittul, you remove yourself from being part of the courtyard. So what do we say then? Hatam hainu taima kihechi below they have a milta derbana the chuka lula. No, that's not the real reason. The reason why we don't let you do many bittles is because people will be will make fun of it. Because basically, what do you do? First, one person will negate theirs, so the person can use the chatzer, then he'll transfer it back, and they'll play this whole game where they just take turns carrying a piece of bittul, and it'll be a joke. So that's why we don't want to do that. So then basically everybody's circumventing the isser, and they're not taking the solution seriously enough. And now we're going back to discuss that case more in depth. So Kufa, Rav Amar Mevatlin, Choser Mevatlin, Shmuel Amar and Mevatlin, Choser Mevatlin. So now we mentioned the machloket about can you do repeated negations or not. So Rav says you can. Shmuel says nope, you can do bittul once and that's it. So Lema Rav Shmuel b'pluta derbanan Rabbi Eliezer. Let's say that Rav and Shmuel, they argue about along the lines of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan. The Rav Amar Rabbanan and Shmuel Amar Rabbi Eliezer. And Rav holds like Shmuel. Like Rav holds like the Rabbanan and Shmuel. Shmuel holds like Rabbi Eliezer. So now, how does this line up, and how can we explain these cases? So again, to review. So Rav says you can repeat a negation. Shmuel says you cannot. Rabbi Eliezer says is talking about, again, if you forgot to join the Eruv prior, can you be Mevatel on Shabbos or not? So Rabbi Eliezer says you can only fully remove yourself and your house, but you can't. But the people then can't use your house. Whereas the Chaim say, no, you simply give over your full rights both to your house and to your courtyard and everybody else, and then therefore you can also use it because you are now part of the rest of the Chatzar. The question is, does your doing bittul fully remove you or not? Is the assumption. That's how we're linking the two machloket. Right? So that Rav says that if you do mevatel your rights, you're not fully removing yourself, just like Rabbanan who say that you could still use the courtyard just as if you're living as your guest and you're a guest. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer says, no, if you do bittul, if you removed your house from if you made a separate chatzar now with your house in it, and therefore that's why you can't have anybody carry your house, which is also why you can't, like Shmuel, you can't repeatedly give up your rights. So Rav. So now we're going to say, is this really how we should hold? So Rav would have said why he doesn't hold why he could hold like Rabbi Eliezer or like Chachamim. Anon the Amri of Fidel Rabbi Eliezer. Even Eliezer should agree with me. Adkam Akam Rabbi Eliezer Hatam Mavatal Rashut Chatzero Rashut Beito Bitel Mishum Bayt Lo Chatzer Lo Dairi Inshe Aval Lian Itzaluke Mi Amar. So maybe Rabbi Eliezer's opinion why he didn't let you do bittul reshus without being moving your courtyard as well is that people wouldn't be able to live. Nobody would be able to live with only living in their house. They need their courtyard too. But so who would say that means that that he may say no to bittul, but who says that means that he's saying that you're fully removed from the courtyard? That's not necessarily linked. Therefore, so Rav saying that actually both Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim agree with me. Shmuel said they both agree with me. Anan the Amri, I feel like Rabban, even the Rabban don't agree to my opinion here. So no, the Chachamim we're talking about there, they were simply stating that if you did bittul, then you're full of mevatel. But if you didn't, then you're not. Then you're not. Then you didn't do bittul, you're still part of it. But who's to say that if you actually did bittul, that you're completely removed from the chatzar and they can't have any usage of it whatsoever? That's not how bittul works. Maybe that's so. Maybe they could say that that maybe they would say that you're fully removed because their statement didn't relate to removal from the courtyard. They're saying related to how that the bittul would work or not. So that right, because Eruvin and Rebbe's original mahloka was, can you do a will person be able to do bittul on Shabbos? Right. So Rebbe said no, because a person would never be willing to live without their courtyard, and then Chaim said sure he would. We don't know what the svara behind those are. So because you give different svara according to Rav or Shmuel to that Mishnah, therefore we can't be sure who is following whom. Amar of Asa Bar Chana, Amar of Sheshes Kitanai. Rav Asa Bar Chana said to Rav Sheshes, this is based on the following Machlokes Tanaim: Mi Shanatan Rishutov Hotzi Ben B'Shogim Ben Mezid Aser Divei Rabbi Meir. So Asa, son of Chana, said, and then Rav Sheshes said this is based on the Machlokes Tanaim that if somebody who gave rights to the courtyard, meaning he was Batal Rishut, and Hotzi Ben B'Shogim Ben Mezid Aser Divei Rabbi Meir. Somebody had originally been Mevatel, but then all of a sudden, or gave up his rights towards the Chatzar, then all of a sudden he starts using the Chatzar. So does that negate his previous negation, right? Do we, or back to square one, because he started using it. Is it now usher on everybody? So Rabbi Meir says yes. Rabbi Yehuda Omer made it oser, but Shogeg and oser. Rabbi Yehuda says no. You had to have only the person deliberately carried and started using the chatzar, right? Because that means that he's taking back what he said earlier. But if he still made a mistake, he's like, oh, you're right, I'm not allowed to use it. My bad, and that would be different. So my love, l'hakim eflugi. Mar sav mevatlin v'chozer mevatlin, and Mar savar ein mevatlin chozer mevatlin. So what did you say that the machloket here is? Are you allowed to do repeated negations or not? Versus you can, because we're allowed to do repeated negations. That's why if you change your mind later, it can have an effect, right? Whether intentionally or unintentionally, if you show that you changed your mind, that's a problem. But if we say that you're not supposed to be able to do closing Ravatel, so then it's only matters if you did it intentionally. It means it shows the original intent was no good, but now it's fine. But if you just did it by accident, then the answer is because you really can't do it again. So that means that whatever you're doing now doesn't affect earlier. So Amar Rav Acha Bar Tachlifa Mishmei Rabba. So now Rav Acha Bar Tachlifa, and then Rava just rejects this. He says, "Lo, Kuli Alma Imivat Lim Chaz Ravatla." No, nobody says you're allowed to do repeated negations of your rights. Hachav Kansu Shogeg Hatu Mezid Kamiflu. Their argument is did they say that the Eruv is no good when a person walked in by accident versus they did so on purpose? Marasavar Kansu Shogi Gatumezid, and Marasavar Lo Kansu Shogi Gatumezid. Now the whole question comes down to is that every agrees if you did bittul properly, you did bittul, and you can't do bittul again. The question is there Midrash, we forbid the accidental cases also being a problem because we're worried that if you start letting people carry accidentally, they'll end up doing so on purpose as well. So Rabbi Meir is worried that if you listen to B'shogeg, it'll become to Mezid, whereas Rabbi Yehuda is not worried.
Freezing again.
Okay, so Rabbi Meir is worried, whereas Rabbi Yehuda is not worried about the people making a mistake between the accident versus on purpose. Okay, so similarly, we rejected all these.
You froze up again for.
Okay, so similarly,
Rabbi, you froze up for about 10 seconds there. Just 10 seconds back.
Okay, so we've concluded that seemingly everybody holds there's no such thing as repeated negation, and that the machloket is unrelated to the machloket of Rabbi Elazar and Rabbanan. But then Rav Ashi Amar Rav Shmuel b'plukta Rabbi Elazar Rabbanan kamifligate. No, Rav Ashi says nope. Actually, Gemara, thank you very much, but really Rav Shmuel really does line up for Rabbi Elazar and the machloket we just spoke about. So, and there's our conclusion. Questions of which opinion do you want to follow? But either way, it looks like we have a conclusion now, which is good. So now we're going to go on to the next section of the Mishnah. So Amar Rabbi Gamliel Maaseh b'Tzaduki Echad Shrei Darimanu Tzaduki Man Zechar Shmei. So Rabbi Gamliel says that we have a story involving a Tzduki living on our Chatzar. So the word's like, wait, why are we talking about Tzduki? That's not mentioned yet. Like, why do you bring that discussion in here? Let's reread the Mishnah so we can understand how this is. The question is again, in the Mishnah, where do we mention it's Tzduki? So Tzaduki Harei Gagoy, right? So when we mentioned somebody lives as a non-Jew, that creates a problem of Eruvin. So now we're saying that a Tzduki is considered to be a non-Jew for purposes of Eruvin. Right? So Tanakh says that he is like a non-Jew, and Rabbi Gamliel says he's not like a non-Jew. Or Rabbi Gamliel saying that he's not considered to be like a non-Jew, meaning that he'll have different effects on our Eruv than a non-Jew would have. So what is the case that Rabbi Gamliel said once we had a Sadducee who was in the same alleyway as we were in Yerushalayim, and then my father, Rabbi Yehuda, had said that we should take up all of our kalim to the into the court, into the alleyway, so that way before he does, that way we can know that way it will be clear that's our usage on Shabbos. Tanya, wait, go to the right, that contradicts this. Tanya, Hadar im hanachri, Paduki, Ubaitusi, Hare Elu Osrin Allah. I'm right to say that whether you live with a non-Jew, a Sadducee or a Baitusi, yes, so Sadducees and Baitusis are different sects of Judaism that how they differ is an interesting debate. Basically, they seem to either have no Torah Shabbal Peh or to perform Torah Shabbal Peh, and they seem to have split off several hundred years prior to the destruction of the Beit Mikdash. So these different sects of Judaism. So if they or a non-Jew were living with you in the same courtyard, it means that you can't make an Eruv. Unless you have to circumvent them somehow. But default is they can't join your Eruv. Okay? And then we have in parentheses, Rabbi Gamliel, Omer, Tzduki, Baitusi, and an Osri. So that should probably be removed, because as we'll see in a second. So that line about Rabbi Gamliel saying that the Tzduki and the Baitusi would not forbid. So Matzah Tzduki Achad Shadar im Rabbi Gamliel, B'Mavoy Yerushalayim. Amar Lahem Rabbi Gamliel Levanav. So now this story is a little bit different. So this is saying that Rabbi Gamliel was living with his kids, not the Rabbi Gamliel's father and him. He says, Banai, Maharu Votziu Mashaten, Votziim, Vachnisu Mashaten, Vachnisim, Ashlo Yotzi Hatoev, Hazav Yasor Alechem, Sharei, Bitel Rashuto, Lachem, Nivrei, Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Gamliel said, make sure that you, whatever you want to leave in the courtyard, leave whatever you want to be using, bring in before the, I'm betting that this non-Jew is going to, either the non-Jew or the Tzduki of the Baitusi is going to start using the courtyard. Will then mean that we don't have rights to it for Shabbos, and that'll be a problem. That's Rabbi Meir's opinion. Meaning he had done bittul, but we're saying that seemingly this non-Jew is going to go back on his agreement. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'lashon acheret. So no, Rabbi Yehuda phrases the things in the reverse fashion. He says, Haru v'asu sorchechem b'mavoi ad shelo tachshach ve'asar alecha. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says, he spoke to them about something else, saying that you need to do. Rabbi Yehuda explained things differently. He said that go do what you need to do for the Eruv before it gets dark, and then it'll be prohibited for you to do so. So, Marmar hotziu ma shatem hotziin, achnisu ma shatem machnisim, ad shelo yotzi et oev hazeh v'esor alecha. So, again, so now we're back to the Beit which said that make sure that you do what you need to do with the chatzar before this non-Jew, this abomination decides to change his mind, and then he'll make it forbidden. What it means to say that if the non-Jew would have changed his mind later, it doesn't mean that what you had done until now is forbidden. So v'hatanan on the page, mi shenatan rishuto v'hotzi ben mishogi ben b'mezid oser to Rabbi Meir. Wait, didn't Rabbi Meir say that if somebody gave permission then themselves carried, will there be intentional or intentionally? It forbids the usage. So how are we saying that? So doesn't that imply that forbidden? What you had done also was forbidden because he's undoing his initial negation. What's going on here? Rav Yosef, Ema, Eno Oser. No, Rav Yosef says no. So you should read it as Eno Oser. It's not forbidden from here on out. So what you did before was okay. Abai lo kasher kan sheziko b'nei mavoy b'mavoy kan shelo yeziko b'nei mavoy b'mavoy. Abai says the difference is whether or not the rest of the people who live surrounding the alleyway started using it or not. If they did, then the person can't take back what they had in mind. But if they didn't, then they could, and that's how we solve the issue. But then, so when we say retroactively, would it have been allowed or not, is whether or not the people in the courtyard have already taken control or not. Then now we're going to question that. Is that even possible? Hatanya ad shalo natan reshuto hotzi b'mishogi b'mezid yachol batel Eruvin Meir. Wait, Yehuda Omer b'shogi yachol batel mezid in yachol batel. Wait, but other Beit has something else about giving up your rights. It says that if you removed deliberately or accidentally, you could still be bittul again, according to Eruvin Meir. But Yehuda says, if you accidentally started using it, you could still do bittul, but if you were deliberately using the courtyard, you can no longer give up your rights anymore, which implies that you can't that you only have one chance, and that you can't change your mind ever again. So now we're going to reanalyze. So now we're reanalyzing the previous statement. Mishana tan reshut. And also somebody who gave permission and then carried out. But Mishogmi made it Eruvin Meir. Meir says that if you gave permission and then you start carrying, then it undoes what you agreed on previously. It forbids it for everybody else. Rabbi Yehuda Omer made it Oser Mishogmi in Oser. And Rabbi Yehuda says if you do it deliberately, after you've given permission, that'll negate, but accidentally it won't. Now we're trying to figure out how this works. So the Metzger Memorim, what's the case? B'shalo hichziku b'nei mavoy b'mavoy. But hichziku b'nei mavoy b'mavoy, and b'shogi b'mezid in oser. So we're saying now, before we're saying it's all based on the one individual with all the power. Now we're saying no, he only has the power if he's acting in a vacuum. If the rest of the people living there had started taking control of over the courtyard or over the alleyway, then whatever he does, it's too late. Right? So we're all talking about, so once somebody else's intent gets involved, then his and usage gets involved, then his own then his own moving of things can't affect it anymore. Now we're going to say so that's the full version of how giving of usage and not will end up working. So okay, so I think we'll stop here. Actually, no, let's do this. Let's do that 2 lines, just because it's on the same topic. We'll start the yeah. So let's try to squeeze this a little bit in. Again, so this whole time we're talking about giving up of your rights. So they're saying, what is the time limit here? So Amar Mar or Yehuda Amar B'Lashem. All right, Maharu Vasu Tzorchechem Mavoy Ad Shlo Techshach Ve'Sar Alechem Al Makoyhu Non Ad Shlo Yotzi Tanan. Yehuda said it differently. What you need to do before it gets dark, and because then he'll be forbidden for you, which means that he's got the status of a non-Jew. But didn't we say that until he takes it out, right? So what do you mean that you're saying by dark? Like you can't have both those phrases in the Mishnah. Rather, no. Let's change the words. We say no. The question comes down to whether this other Jew is considered to be a non-Jew or not is based on is he a Jew who's violating Shabbos in public or only or in private. If he does it in Shabbos and violates Shabbos in public, then it's considered to be a non-Jew. But if for the purposes of Eruvin and Shabbos, if someone does it privately, then that would not be the case. Okay. So so we'll stop there. So let's just quickly sum up what we covered today. So we covered the fact that you should definitely make an eruv and make every effort you can, especially nowadays that the issue is not as steep financially as it used to be. Most of us can afford to give the box of matzahs to the eruv. The only question is, did you make sure to set up the walls prior in advance? I learned from all of the different ways around it and the solutions that the Gemara gave about getting hot water for the baby. So same after the bris. So therefore we should do our best to do so. Also spoke about the case of Beit Rishut and how and when you can and can't do it, and can you do it repeatedly or not. And yeah, hopefully I will give the post recording of Shabbos stuff later today, and we'll pick up on Sunday at 7:10 with Daf.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Have a good
Shabbat
day.
Shalom.
Shabbos. Bye.